Ever fallen asleep at the worst possible moment? Well, you're in good company. Royal company, actually. From snoring through peace talks to dozing off at their own weddings, these powerful monarchs proved that even kings can't fight the Sandman. Let's talk about King George III's most embarrassing nap. Right in the middle of Parliament discussing what to do about those pesky American colonies, old George decided it was the perfect time for some shut-eye. Picture the scene. It's 1775, the most important debate of his reign, and there's the King of England, head tilted back, mouth wide open, making those weird little snorty sounds. The MPs kept clearing their throats, hoping to wake him up, but nope, George was out cold. Some historians say this little power nap might have cost him America. I mean, it's hard to keep your colonies when you're too busy counting sheep, right? The best part? When he finally woke up, he apparently asked, "What did I miss?" Talk about a royal facepalm moment. Speaking of royal nappers, Emperor Claudius took sleeping on the job to a whole new level. This Roman ruler loved to snooze during court cases, which, was kind of a problem since he was supposed to be the judge. There's this hilarious story where lawyers had to literally shout their arguments to keep him awake. One time, they got so frustrated they started throwing rotten fruit at him. But here's the real kicker. Claudius would sometimes wake up mid-trial and just yell "guilty" without having heard any evidence. Imagine getting convicted because the emperor needed his beauty sleep. The Roman Senate eventually had to pass a law requiring all legal decisions to be written down, just to make sure Claudius wasn't sleep judging anymore. Let me tell you about the Sun King's most unsunny moment. Louis XIV loved showing off. He literally made everyone watch him eat breakfast. But his biggest oops came during a fancy ballet at Versailles. Here's the thing. Louis wasn't just watching the show, he was in it. He'd cast himself as Apollo, the sun god. Subtle, right? So there he is, decked out in this ridiculous golden costume with fake sun rays sticking out everywhere, when suddenly, he starts nodding off. Mid-dance. The orchestra kept playing while the King of France wobbled around like a sleepy toddler, nearly poking other dancers' eyes out with his costume. The courtiers had to pretend not to notice as their divine ruler basically sleepwalked through his solo. Talk about a royal faceplant. Let's talk about Charles II of Spain, the king who turned royal weddings into his personal nap time. This guy had a special talent for dozing off at the altar, including at his own wedding. During his marriage to Marie-Louise of Orléans in 1679, he kept nodding off while saying his vows. The priest had to nudge him awake 3 times, but that's not even the best part. At his sister's wedding, he snored so loudly that the bride and groom had to pause the ceremony. The guests tried everything to keep him awake. Someone even waved smelling salts under his nose. But Charles just mumbled something about 5 more minutes and kept right on snoozing. The Spanish court started scheduling weddings for early morning, hoping he'd be fresher. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Want to hear about the time Henry VIII accidentally changed English law in his sleep? After a massive feast in 1536, we're talking 20 courses of meat, Henry was in a serious food coma. His advisors saw their chance. They slipped 3 royal decrees under his snoring face, and his drool actually made the ink run. The best part? One decree made it illegal to wear purple unless you were the king, another banned people from whistling on Thursdays, and the third made cheese rolling an official sport. When Henry woke up and found out, he was too embarrassed to admit he'd been napping on the job. So these ridiculous laws stayed on the books for years. Talk about a royal oops moment. Here's a wild one. Peter the Great actually snored his way to victory. During the peace talks with Sweden in 1721, Peter was exhausted from a 3-day party. Classic Peter. Right in the middle of negotiations, he crashed hard and started snoring like a bear. But here's the genius part. The Swedish diplomats thought he was faking it to show how little he cared about their demands. They got so nervous about his apparent confidence that they agreed to better terms just to wake him up. When Peter finally came to, he found out he'd won major territory around the Baltic Sea. His advisors quickly told him to act like it was all part of his master plan. From then on, Peter claimed he'd invented snore diplomacy. I guess sometimes being a royal sleepyhead pays off. Ever heard of sleeping on the job? Well, Frederick the Great took it to a whole new level during the Battle of Leuthen in 1757. The King of Prussia was so tired from planning his brilliant military strategy that he dozed off behind a tree during the actual fight. His soldiers were running around like headless chickens looking for him while the Austrians nearly broke through their lines. A young lieutenant finally found Frederick curled up with his tricorn hat as a pillow, snoring away while cannons boomed nearby. The king jumped up, shouted, "I was just resting my eyes," and somehow managed to turn the situation around. He led a cavalry charge, still yawning, and Prussia won the day. Though let's be honest, it was probably the closest anyone's ever come to losing a battle because they needed a power nap. The siege of Vienna could have gone way differently if Sultan Mehmed IV hadn't caught some Z's at the worst moment. During the big strategy meeting in 1683, the Sultan was supposed to be planning this massive attack. Instead, he turned it into nap time deluxe. His generals were pointing at maps and discussing battle plans while Mehmed was slumped in his fancy chair, making these adorable little snuffling noises. The best part? He sleep-talked his way through approving a totally bonkers battle plan. He kept mumbling, "Yes, excellent," while dreaming about kebabs. When the siege actually happened, everyone realized why attacking through the sewers wasn't the brilliant strategy they thought it was. Maybe if Mehmed had stayed awake, the Ottoman Empire wouldn't have suffered one of its biggest defeats. Here's the wildest plot twist in witch trial history. King James I, the guy who literally wrote the book on hunting witches, kept falling asleep during the trials. Talk about workplace irony. In 1597, at the height of Scotland's witch panic, James would sit there all serious-faced for about 10 minutes before his head started doing that nodding thing. The accused would be mid-confession about dancing with the devil, and there's the king, sawing logs like a lumberjack. The court clerks figured out that if they waited until he was snoring, they could quietly declare "not guilty" and hustle the accused out before he woke up. At least 12 accused witches escaped the stake thanks to James's impromptu naps. Nero really took the phrase "drama queen" to a whole new level. This guy would demand these epic 6-hour plays, then fall asleep halfway through. The poor actors had to freeze in position when they noticed him nodding off, then restart the scene when he jolted awake. Sometimes they'd perform the same death scene 5 times because Nero kept missing it. The actors started adding extra sword clashes and loud screams just to keep him conscious. One time, a clever performer actually incorporated Nero's snores into his monologue, pretending they were the sounds of angry gods. The audience loved it. But Nero, he slept right through that too. Thanks for joining our royal nap tour through history. These snoozing sovereigns prove that even the mightiest need their beauty sleep. Hit that like button, subscribe for more historical shenanigans, and share with your friends who can't stay awake in meetings.